Imagine waiving a massive, life-altering financial debt for someone you love.
Right.
Like believing you've just bought mutual freedom from a deeply toxic transactional culture.
Yeah, you think you're setting up this totally modern, progressive partnership.
Exactly. Only to realize, a few years later, you didn't buy freedom at all. You just heavily subsidized the very cage they're about to lock you inside.
Wow. Yeah, it is a terrifying realization because, you aren't just dealing with a broken promise at that point.
Right.
You are dealing with a fundamental rupture in reality. Like, you thought you were co-authoring a romance, and suddenly you discover you're just, an actor in someone else's high-stakes public relations campaign.
It's so heavy. Welcome, by the way, to today's Deep Dive. We're so glad you're joining us.
Yeah, glad to have you here.
Today, we are opening up a deeply personal, incredibly raw email that was sent to us by a listener in India.
It really is a meticulous, real-time account of his marriage just completely unraveling.
Yeah, it is. And our mission today is to take this source material and dissect a very specific, very modern tragedy, which is the love-starved, performance-driven marriage.
Right.
We are going to explore how a remarkably mundane event, literally just being asked to serve as a best man.
Which sounds so normal.
Right, how that can act as the ultimate stress test. We're going to uncover how that single request shattered the foundation of this relationship.
And, exposed this whole labyrinth of hidden expectations and the crushing weight of cultural performance.
Yeah, and the devastating physiological impact of lost emotional safety.
Which is huge. And we should clarify, we are navigating some intensely heavy emotional territory here.
For sure.
The source text brings us face to face with toxic family dynamics, the weaponization of tradition, and just the agonizing breakdown of communication.
But our goal is to extract the structural mechanics of this collapse, right?
Yeah, exactly. By understanding the anatomy of this specific marital failure, you can apply these universal lessons about boundaries, authentic communication, and the hidden contracts we all sign to your own relationships.
Okay, let's unpack this. The entire foundation of this story, like the bedrock upon which this eventual tragedy is built, rests on a profound cultural context.
It does. It really does.
The author starts by painting a very stark, very specific picture of the marital landscape in his community. He outlines the deeply entrenched expectations surrounding weddings.
Specifically, the immense financial burden placed squarely on the bride's family.
Right. He lists the traditional expectations, the practical domestic items like televisions, grinders, household appliances.
But then he explicitly points out the extreme, darker side of this cultural machine.
Yeah, because it gets dark.
He notes that many grooms' families expect millions of rupees in cash, and on top of that, they demand high-end luxury sedans or SUVs as part of the dowry.
Which is just wild to think about.
Notice the spectrum he is describing here. We move from a grinder, which is, a tool for basic sustenance and domestic labor, to a luxury SUV.
Which is purely a vehicle of status.
Exactly. External projection.
And the consequences he notes for failing to meet these demands are chilling. Like, he writes about marriages being stopped dead in their tracks at the altar.
Oh, or worse, daughters-in-law facing severe emotional and physical torture after the wedding if the demands aren't retroactively met.
It paints a picture of an ecosystem where marriage is, well, for many, a high-stakes economic transaction.
With potentially lethal social consequences. It is a systemic pressure cooker.
Yeah.
The economic leverage is entirely asymmetrical, favoring the groom's family. The stakes are unimaginably high for the bride's parents.
But what makes our author's story so compelling, and what sets the psychological trap we are about to explore, is his conscious deviation from this system.
Right. He actively chooses not to participate.
He explicitly states that he, coming from a family that is against the dowry system, recognized his bride's family was lower middle class.
So he made a deliberate ideological choice. He politely declined all gifts, all money, all traditional offerings.
He goes a step further, actually. He tells them to take whatever money they had saved for his wedding and keep it for the bride's younger brother's future marriage.
Which is huge.
He completely waives his traditional, culturally sanctioned rights as a groom. And the text reveals a lot about his self-perception here.
Oh, totally.
He describes himself as a broad-minded fellow who is not selfish. Like, he firmly believed he was establishing a progressive, non-transactional foundation for their life together.
And the source text notes that the bride's family was happy and relieved.
Obviously.
But this requires some intense critical analysis. This is the exact moment the first invisible fracture in the foundation occurs.
Wait, really? The moment he does something nice?
Yeah, because we have to interrogate that relief. Was their happiness rooted in a shared progressive ideology?
Oh, I see.
Did they view his refusal of the dowry as a mutual, enlightened rejection of a toxic tradition? Or, and this is the danger of unspoken assumptions, was it simply the visceral relief of catching a lucky break from a crippling financial burden?
Wow. But hold on, let me push back on the author a bit here. Wasn't he actually being incredibly naive?
In what way?
Well, he thought he could just, highlight and delete the financial line item of a centuries-old tradition, but keep the marriage entirely intact as a modern institution.
Right, yeah.
Isn't there a bit of a savior complex happening here? He sweeps in, saves them from financial ruin, and assumes he has fundamentally altered their worldview.
That is a brilliant distinction. It is a form of ideological projection. He engaged in what psychologists call an unspoken marital contract.
An unspoken contract, okay.
He assumed that by waiving his traditional financial power, he was purchasing a different kind of currency.
Ah.
He thought he was buying the right to be understood and respected as an independent individual, specifically regarding his naturally shy and introverted nature.
So he thought it was a trait.
Exactly. He genuinely believed that by opting out of the financial transaction, he had bought mutual freedom from the entire social apparatus of what will others think.
It totally reminds me of a real estate transaction.
Okay, how so?
Imagine you are buying a house from someone you know is struggling financially. Out of the goodness of your heart, you tell them, hey, don't worry about the inspection. Don't worry about fixing the roof or paying the closing costs. I'll waive all of that. Keep your money.
Right. And on the surface, it looks purely altruistic.
Exactly. But deep down, subconsciously, you assume that because you gave them this massive, generous pass, they are now going to be incredibly accommodating to you.
You assume you've purchased their permanent goodwill.
Yeah. So when you move in, you expect them to have your back when the Neighborhood Homeowners Association tries to fine you for having the wrong color mailbox.
Which is a very common dynamic.
But then that very same seller comes back, knocks on your door, and demands you paint your house the exact color the HOA wants.
Yeah.
Just to appease the neighborhood gossip.
Oh.
You'd feel completely betrayed. You'd think, I saved you thousands of dollars. I bucked the system for you, and now you are enforcing the system's rules on me.
It's the perfect analogy. The author thought deleting the financial spreadsheet meant the entire cultural operating system was uninstalled.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
But his bride and her family never agreed to dismantle the operating system. They just enjoyed the premium software for free.
Right.
They might have been thrilled they didn't have to buy the grinder or the sedan, but they still fully intended to play the social game.
This fundamental misalignment of values sets a ticking mechanism deep in the basement of this marriage. Like they're operating on two completely different ledgers.
Absolutely.
He thinks they are in a modern, progressive partnership based on mutual authenticity. She operates as if they are in a highly traditional marriage where social optics still reign supreme. She just happened to get a fantastic discount on the entry fee.
And the problem with an unspoken contract is that when it inevitably breaks down, there is no agreed-upon mechanism to repair it.
Because it was never spoken.
Right. It can sit quietly for years, masked by the routine of daily life. But eventually, reality forces a stress test.
And the profound irony of this source material is that the catalyst involves the very brother whose marriage the author helps save money for.
It really is unbelievable.
The younger brother's wedding. This is where the abstract misalignment becomes a concrete battleground. A couple of years pass. The younger brother, the direct beneficiary of the author's dowry refusal, is getting married.
Okay.
And the wife brings forth a non-negotiable demand. The author must be the best man.
Which we have to factor in the author's established self-assessment here.
Right, he's shy.
Very shy. He is a naturally reserved, introverted person. He knows his own psychological boundaries.
Yeah.
The prospect of standing in front of hundreds of people, performing a highly visible, scrutinized cultural role, causes him genuine discomfort.
So he does what he should do, right?
Right. He does what a healthy, differentiated adult should do.
Yeah.
He politely declines. He communicates his discomfort and offers highly practical, logical alternatives.
He's not just saying no.
No, he suggests a close friend of the brother or someone from the wife's side of the family take the role.
It's a completely rational compromise. He's not boycotting the wedding. He's saying, I will be there to support you. I will sit in the front row, but I cannot perform this specific theatrical role because it violates my core nature.
Exact.
But the wife meets this boundary with fierce, escalating resistance. It culminates in a dramatic confrontation in their bedroom, like a month before the wedding.
Right.
She breaks down crying. And in the middle of this emotional storm, she drops what I think is the most revealing, devastating line in the entire text.
Yeah, this line is huge.
She says, "We both are not happy. Now, if you are not the best man, what will others think of us?"
What's fascinating here is the profound cognitive dissonance in that sentence alone.
It's jarring.
We both are not happy. She leads with this startlingly lucid acknowledgement of the internal failure of their marriage.
She knows.
She is fully aware that the relationship itself is hollow. The core is rotting. But then, without taking a single breath to address that tragedy, she pivots directly to, "Now, if you are not the best man, what will others think of us?"
It's staggering. It completely bypasses the emotional emergency to focus on the PR crisis.
We are looking at the stark difference between a guilt culture and a shame culture.
Okay, unpack that for us.
In a guilt-driven paradigm, behavior is regulated by internal conscience. You feel bad because you violated your own moral code, regardless of who saw it.
Right.
But in a highly enmeshed shame culture, behavior is regulated almost entirely by external community judgment. Your self-worth is inextricably linked to how others perceive you.
So her feelings don't even matter as much as the neighborhood's feelings.
Right. Her internal empathy circuits are being completely overridden by her enmeshment trauma. She literally cannot conceive of a reality where her husband's internal comfort matters more than the community's external validation.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second here. Is the wife just completely heartless? Or is she operating in a state of sheer panic?
That's a great question.
Because if her entire identity in this community is predicated on being part of a successful marriage, and she knows the marriage is actually failing, the thought of the community seeing the cracks might feel like literal social annihilation to her.
It absolutely feels like a survival threat to her. It is a panic response. But, understanding her panic doesn't mitigate the destructiveness of her actions.
No, it doesn't.
This is the definition of a performance marriage. When the authentic connection between two people dies, or perhaps never existed, partners who lack strong self-differentiation cannot face the void.
They just can't look at it.
Instead of turning inward to repair the house, they spend all their energy painting the outside so the neighbors don't know it's empty. The marriage ceases to be a sanctuary and becomes a stage play.
And the author's shock just radiates off the page.
Yeah.
This is the moment the illusion shatters for him. He realizes the staggering hypocrisy of it all.
The hypocrisy is glaring.
When they bypassed the dowry norm, which directly and financially benefited her family, there was no crying in the bedroom about how the neighbors would judge a marriage with no televisions or luxury sedans.
Right. They were perfectly happy to buck the culture when it saved them money.
But now, when it's purely about social optics, when it requires him to perform an identity that isn't his, she demands he sacrifice himself to the altar of community opinion.
And the irony is almost physically painful. He explicitly told them to save the dowry money for this exact wedding.
Wow.
He indirectly subsidized the very stage upon which he is now being forced to perform. He bought the theater, and now he is being emotionally blackmailed for refusing to play the lead actor.
He protected her family from the cultural machine, and in return, she decides to feed him directly into the gears.
That's exactly what happened.
And when her tears and her desperate logic fail to break his boundary, she doesn't reflect. She doesn't accept the no. She changes tactics.
Because she can't win the argument on its merits.
Right. Her brain seeks the path of least resistance, which is outsourcing the conflict.
The internal pressure failed, so she initiates a process of communal escalation. The wife and her family begin a coordinated whisper campaign.
A whisper campaign.
Yeah. They start bad-mouthing the author to extended relatives. They are actively controlling the narrative, painting him not as an introvert setting a boundary, but as a stubborn, unsportive villain ruining a family celebration.
They are isolating him. And they rope in a very specific, highly symbolic figure, an uncle.
Right.
But not just any uncle. This was a neighbor who originally arranged or suggested the marriage. The matchmaker.
Which is key here. In many traditional, highly structured communities, the matchmaker or the elder who facilitates the union holds a position of immense, almost unassailable authority.
They're like the guarantor of the marriage.
Exactly, sort of communal underwriter. By pulling the uncle into this, the wife is deploying a highly aggressive psychological tactic. We often hear the term triangulation, but it's important to understand how sophisticated it is here.
Let's break down the mechanics of that for the listener. Because triangulation isn't just venting to a friend.
No. Triangulation occurs when a person, unable to resolve a conflict directly, recruits a third party to form a coalition against the target. It artificially inflates the power dynamic.
Right.
But here, she doesn't just triangulate with a peer, she weaponizes authority. She uses the uncle to induce ambient gaslighting.
Ambient gaslighting.
The message becomes, it's not just me who thinks you are wrong. The architect of our marriage, the representative of our culture, thinks you are defective. It turns a private boundary dispute into a referendum on his cultural compliance.
And if you're listening to this and thinking, well, my culture doesn't have matchmakers, so I can't relate, think again.
Yeah, it happens everywhere.
Have you ever had a partner use a mutual friend or a parent, or even weaponize a therapist's vocabulary as an authority figure to win an argument?
Oh, absolutely.
Have they ever said, well, my therapist says you're being unreasonable, or even your own mother agrees with me? That's the exact same triangulation of authority happening here. It's a refusal to handle conflict intimately.
And the wife and the uncle then calculate their next move with surgical precision. They know exactly where the author's deepest vulnerabilities lie.
Yeah, they go right for the weak spot.
They know about his father. The source text explicitly mentions the author had a toxic father, someone he intentionally kept walled off from his marriage.
He's trying to be healthy.
He was trying to operate as an independent, differentiated adult. But the day before the wedding, the uncle bypasses the author entirely and calls the toxic father.
They shatter the firewall.
They do.
And the father's reaction is brutal. The author notes that his father called him up and delivered an hour-long vicious lecture.
An entire hour.
A full 60 minutes of verbal battery. And the father specifically zeroes in on a devastating insult. He calls the author a braveless person.
Wow.
He attributes all of the author's perceived life failures to this attitude. The author simply writes, and this breaks my heart. Trust me, my heart felt the pain. I was cornered.
That phrase, braveless person, is an attack designed to dismantle his core identity.
Yeah.
Let's look at the reality of the situation. The author is actually exhibiting profound bravery.
Very much so.
It takes immense psychological courage to stand up to deeply ingrained cultural expectations, to say no to an enmeshed spouse, and to protect your own mental health. He is holding the line for his own autonomy.
But the toxic father flips the script entirely. He mischaracterizes healthy boundary setting as cowardice. He attacks the author's masculinity and his fundamental worth.
Right.
This dynamic feels exactly like a brutal corporate escalation. Imagine you have a minor procedural disagreement with a coworker.
Okay.
Instead of talking it out, she bypasses you. CC's the middle manager, that's the uncle.
Right.
The middle manager then goes over your head and calls the chairman of the board your toxic, estranged dad to threaten your job and humiliate you.
It's toxic.
How can any partnership survive when a hostile board of directors is kept on standby to crush your autonomy?
It guarantees the death of the partnership because it demonstrates that there is zero emotional safety within the marriage.
Zero.
This sequence also highlights a tragic sociological phenomenon, the infantilization of adults within strict patriarchal or elder worship structures.
Yeah, he's treated like a child.
The author is a grown man, he is a husband, yet because of these cultural mandates, he is scolded by his father and his wife's uncle as if he were a disobedient toddler. His adulthood is effectively revoked.
And the cultural programming runs so deep that it silences him. On the actual day of the wedding, the author is forced into the role against his will.
That is just so sad.
The uncle scolds him again right before the ceremony, calling him an immature guy acting like a kid. And the author stays silent. He notes, I didn't talk back because he's elder to me and I don't like to argue.
The visual of that wedding day is agonizing. The external performance is executed flawlessly. The wife secures her victory. The author is standing up there as the best man, wearing the right clothes, standing in the right spot, serving as the visual symbol of familial unity and support.
The photographs will look perfect.
They will. But internally, he has been completely hollowed out. He has been cornered, verbally abused, and utterly betrayed by his wife, who orchestrated his humiliation just to appease the crowd. He is, for all intents and purposes, a hostage in a tuxedo.
A hostage in a tuxedo. It is the ultimate Pyrrhic victory. She got the perfect photo op, but she traded the soul of her husband to acquire it.
Exactly.
The wedding concludes, the applause fades, the community moves on to the next piece of gossip. But the internal damage is catastrophic. The public performance succeeds, but the private sanctuary is completely destroyed.
And that's where the real damage is done.
The conflict now moves from the glaring public eye back into the most vulnerable space of all, the bedroom.
To understand the physiological and emotional death of this marriage, the author provides critical context here.
Okay, let's hear it.
He takes us back to establish a pattern of behavior that was eroding the foundation long before the best man incident.
Oh, so this wasn't the first time.
No, he reveals that early in the marriage, his wife repeatedly levied a very specific, unprovoked insult. She would say, "Your upbringing is not good."
Your upbringing is not good. I want to pause on that. That is not a complaint about leaving a wet towel on the bed.
No.
That's not a critique of a specific behavior.
It is a character assassination. From a psychological standpoint, to insult someone's upbringing is to launch a strike against their core lineage.
Right.
You are insulting their parents, their childhood, their foundational values, and their fundamental operating system. It tells the partner you are intrinsically flawed from the root.
And he says she did this a lot.
Right. And the author notes she repeated this multiple times. It was a sustained campaign of ambient invalidation.
The author, clearly deeply hurt by this, finally summons the courage to confront her. He communicates his pain, and her response is a textbook deployment of emotional abuse tactics. She completely twists reality, claims she was just joking, and adamantly refuses to apologize.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a classic deployment of DARVO, deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender.
Darvo, yeah.
She denies the malicious intent by saying, "I was joking." She attacks his reaction as an oversensitivity and then reverses the roles so that she is the victim of his lack of a sense of humor.
It's maddening.
This is the precise mechanism of gaslighting. By claiming a repeated, highly specific insult about his lineage was a joke, she forces cognitive dissonance upon him. She is attempting to rewrite his reality, telling him his emotional pain is not just invalid, but pathological.
He points out the sheer absurdity of her defense. He writes, "Come on. A 32-year-old adult woman jokes about her husband's upbringing and expects me to believe that."
And he sees right through.
He sees right through the Darvo tactic. He knows it was a weapon, but what makes it infinitely worse is her proposed solution.
Oh, this part is wild.
Instead of offering an apology, she suggests, let both families come together and discuss it.
This is a massive red flag regarding her capacity for intimacy. Notice her default response to accountability.
It's never just saying sorry.
Right. A healthy partner, upon realizing they have caused deep pain to the person they love, experiences remorse. They move closer, they apologize,
Yeah.
but she cannot tolerate the narcissistic injury of admitting fault in a one-on-one setting. So she immediately attempts to escalate a private emotional injury into a public communal tribunal.
She wants a town hall.
She wants to convene a multi-family summit to debate his feelings.
Why do people do this? I genuinely want to explore this. Why is it that for some individuals, uttering a simple two-word phrase like, "I'm sorry," feels like a fate worse than death?
It's about vulnerability.
She was willing to orchestrate a massive, dramatic family intervention in their living room, dragging parents and neighbors into the fray, rather than just look her husband in the eye, take accountability and say, "I hurt you and I am sorry."
Because a genuine apology requires vulnerability. It requires dropping the armor of being right.
And she can't do that.
For someone whose entire psychological structure is built on external validation and maintaining a flawless image, vulnerability feels like annihilation. By bringing in the family, she's hoping to use the audience to validate her Darvo defense. She wants the crowd to agree it was a joke, thereby cementing the gaslighting. She literally cannot process conflict without an audience to perform for.
The author captures the tragedy of this perfectly. He writes, "A simple sorry would have cured my hurt." 2 syllables.
2 syllables.
But because she withheld them, the wound festered and became necrotic. And the result of this sustained emotional betrayal is profound.
It changes everything for him.
He states that due to the upbringing insults, compounded by being forced into the best man role, he completely lost all sexual urge toward her.
We have to pay close attention to the neurobiology of this reaction. He emphasizes that he is a man with a huge libido.
Right, this isn't a medical issue.
This is not a medical issue, this is a survival response. He learns a very harsh, visceral truth. Sex is not only physical, it's also emotional.
His body kept the score. His nervous system physically rejected his wife because his brain categorized her as a hostile threat.
Exactly.
You cannot be physically vulnerable. You cannot achieve genuine intimacy with someone who has proven they will weaponize your deepest insecurities, mock your lineage, and orchestrate campaigns with your toxic relatives to break your will.
You just can't do it.
The libido didn't malfunction. The trust evaporated. And without trust, the body simply shuts the gates.
It is the body's ultimate defense mechanism against further trauma. He notes it has been 4 years of zero intimacy.
4 years.
He refers to his bedroom as a monastery, and he laughs at himself in the text. Ha! Yes, I'm laughing at myself. At least let me do that.
It's so bleak.
That laughter is a bleak coping mechanism against overwhelming grief. A bedroom is culturally and biologically designed to be the ultimate sanctuary of connection, the one place where all public masks can be safely removed.
And for him?
For him, it has been perversely transformed into a symbol of total isolation, a daily physical reminder of his captivity.
It is a devastating portrait of loneliness. With the emotional connection severed, the trust annihilated, and the physical intimacy dead for 4 years, the author reaches the only logical, rational conclusion available.
The marriage is over.
The structure has failed. The marriage is over. But when he tries to walk through the exit, he discovers the door isn't just locked, it is rigged with explosives.
Yeah.
This brings us to the final chilling phase of his ordeal, the trap. The brutal collision between his practicality and her performative martyrdom.
The author, operating from a place of exhausted clarity, takes a highly practical approach. There is no screaming, no dramatic throwing of plates.
Right.
Having accepted that the marriage is completely devoid of love and safety, he calmly suggests a divorce. He looks at the structurally compromised building and says, "We need to execute a controlled demolition before this collapses and crushes us both."
And the wife's immediate reaction. It is the absolute nuclear option. She threatens suicide.
This is the apex of emotional abuse. It is the ultimate hostage-taking dynamic.
It's terrifying.
Let's analyze the absolute devastation of this threat. By threatening to end her own life if he initiates a divorce, she completely obliterates his autonomy.
She takes all his choices away.
She strips him of his fundamental human right to choose his own path, his right to seek a life free of abuse, his right to basic happiness. She locks him inside the burning building, throws the key into the fire, and demands he smile through the smoke.
And the most tragic part is his realization of why she does it. Is it because she is so passionately, deeply in love with him that her heart cannot physically bear the separation?
Not at all.
No. The author realizes with chilling clarity that she is entirely consumed by the fear of neighborhood gossip.
It always comes back to the neighbors.
She is terrified of the social stigma, of what the extended relatives will whisper about a divorced woman. She is completely ignoring the crushing practical reality of their dead relationship, the 4 years in the monastery, the utter absence of joy or connection.
It's unbelievable.
She is willing to live in a miserable, loveless, hostile prison and actively keep him chained to the wall next to her, purely to avoid a bad review from the community.
We are witnessing the ultimate clash of two fundamentally incompatible operating systems here.
Break those down for us.
The author is governed by internal reality. His logic is sound and grounded. Practicality dictates that a total lack of love, safety, and intimacy means the partnership has failed, and they should part ways to find peace separately.
Right, makes sense.
The wife is governed entirely by external reality, gossip, social hierarchy, the illusion of success.
Yeah.
Her logic is terrifyingly rigid. We must maintain the facade at all costs, even if it requires the ultimate emotional blackmail and mutual psychological destruction, because the community's perception is more important than our actual lives.
It forces us to look at how societies inadvertently manufacture these traps.
Absolutely.
If a culture, anywhere in the world, stigmatizes divorce to such an extreme degree, it inadvertently incentivizes emotional terrorism.
It really does.
It creates an environment where people feel that performative martyrdom is a preferable fate to the perceived shame of starting over. It breeds these hollow, zombified marriages that look spectacular in Facebook albums, but feel like a life sentence in solitary confinement behind closed doors.
The societal pressure creates the exact anaerobic conditions for this type of psychological hostage situation to thrive. And it slowly, methodically drains the life force out of the individuals trapped inside.
He drains everything.
The author captures this existential drain beautifully and tragically with his recurring restaurant imagery.
This imagery is the emotional core of the entire text for me. He describes his perspective before the marriage. He was a romantic.
He was hopeful.
He used to go to restaurants alone, look around at the couples eating together, laughing, sharing food, and he envied them. He yearned for that connection, for a partner to navigate life with. It paints this poignant picture of a young, hopeful man looking through a window at a warm room he desperately wants to enter.
And then the text provides the brutal juxtaposition.
Yeah.
Years later, he goes to a restaurant, and he is sitting in that room at the table with his wife. But she is nagging, always complaining, hyper-focused on the negative.
The contrast is so sad.
And now, the older, exhausted, deeply lonely husband looks wistfully across the room, but this time, he envies the single people who can just eat their food in absolute peace.
It is a cinematic encapsulation of total disillusionment. He went from dreaming of connection to actively begging for solitude.
He did?
He tried to buy a modern partnership by waiving the cultural entry fee, and he ended up purchasing a front row seat to his own emotional starvation, which leads to his final, hard-won, incredibly stark lesson. Choose your spouse wisely. It is better to be single than to be with a person who doesn't make you feel loved and sucks all the energy out of you.
It is an undeniable truth forged in the furnace of a deeply painful, isolating experience.
Yeah.
He learned the hardest way possible that profound loneliness within a marriage is vastly more agonizing than simply being alone.
It really is.
When you are single, your energy, your time, your peace, it belongs to you. When you are tethered to someone who demands you constantly perform a role for an audience, while simultaneously starving you of the affection and safety you need, they drain you of the very life force required to survive.
So where does this leave you, the listener? We've spent this time dissecting a very specific cultural context, a specific set of families, and a specific sequence of events.
But the underlying themes...
Exactly. The human behavior, the psychological traps, the mechanics of enmeshment and performance, these are universal.
They happen everywhere.
It is a harsh mirror to hold up to our own lives. Are there areas in your life right now, maybe a romantic relationship, maybe a career path you hate but your parents love, or a dynamic with a friend group, where you are staying utterly miserable purely because you are terrified of what the neighbors, the culture, or the algorithmic audience might gossip about if you leave?
Are you exhausting your own spirit to perform a role just to keep the audience comfortable?
To summarize the immense, difficult journey we've mapped out today, we tracked this author from being an optimistic, broad-minded groom who genuinely thought he was hacking the cultural mainframe by rejecting a dowry, to becoming a cornered, emotionally starved hostage living in a self-described monastery.
We broke down how his healthy attempts at setting boundaries were met with sophisticated triangulation, Darvo tactics, and the weaponization of his own familial trauma.
Right. And we witnessed the tragic reality of a spouse who valued societal applause so far above authentic marital intimacy that she ultimately trapped him in a cage built entirely out of the fear of other people's opinions.
And we keep coming back to the immense, vital power of his final realization.
Protecting your energy, recognizing that peace, autonomy, and quiet solitude are infinitely more valuable than a soul-sucking partnership that demands you amputate parts of your own identity just to fit into their script.
As we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, a slightly different lens through which to view everything we've discussed.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think about the concept of marriage, or any deeply committed relationship, as theater. If our culture, our extended families, or even our meticulously curated social media feeds dictate exactly how our relationship should look on the outside, the required gifts, the perfect vacations, the mandatory smiling photos, the exact roles we must play to be deemed successful, who is taking responsibility for how those relationships actually feel on the inside?
If you spend your entire life meticulously performing a character for an audience of society, desperately following the script they handed you, well, what happens when the curtain finally falls, the audience goes home, and you realize you have to spend the rest of your life trapped backstage in the dark with a co-star you don't even like?
Keep questioning the invisible scripts running your lives.
Thanks for listening. Take care of yourselves out there.